share screen. Whoop. Sure. All right. And so like the Pax Romana would end, and this would cause one of the deaths of the. This was caused by the death of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Right. Subsequent emperors couldn't control the government or control the massive empire he left behind. Hey Barnes, can you get off the phone for me? Or just put it away, please, like in your backpack or in your pocket. All right. And so this would be one way. We have emperors not being able to control this vast land that was being created by the Roman Empire. You see like basically this is where we start to see the fall. The borders start to become weakened from this, and the governmental system starts to weaken also. All right. And so we have those hostile tribes attacking trade routes. How do you think they were attacking trade routes? What were they doing, do you think?
They would wait for them to pass.
Yeah, so they'd raid, they'd set up traps. What does that do to trade, you think? Are you going to be trading that often if you're a trader? If you're constantly being raided and getting killed? Yeah, so it slows it down. It slows down the production of trade routes and roads, all right? So does anybody know what inflation is? What is inflation? Okay, it's when something get big.
Right, so, over time.
So when you're thinking about, so prices go up. It's good. When you think about money, what does inflation mean when it comes to money? So there's more money in the system, right? So what happens when you have a lot of money in a system?
Things go up.
Okay, things go up in price. Why?
There's too much money to go around.
What happens to the dollar when you have too much money? You said it. The value of the dollar goes down. So like the best way to approach this is, so there's like one Roman coin. It's worth one of itself. But if you put too much money into the system, well, now this is going to equal half of itself eventually, because there's so much money in the system. This hyperinflation causes the value to go from 1 to like 0.75 or like 0.5. And so it cuts the value of it. What happens is if the value of your money drops, the price of your goods goes up because you have to compensate for the value that you lost. If that makes sense. Right? That's the kind of the easiest way to talk about inflation. All right. So a lot of Roman trade was farming, but through many years of farming and not proper practices, the soil becomes overworked. What happens when the soil becomes overworked? It doesn't grow anymore. It doesn't grow a lot, or it doesn't grow at all. Yeah. And so you see one of the major source of income or trade is gone. And this also would lead to food shortages. A lot of people had to move to the cities and get supplemented by the governmental aid. They give them bread and stuff like that, right? All right, a century of crisis. Military and political turmoil causes a lot of problems. By the 3rd century, Roman military is in turmoil. Soldiers are loyal to commanders and not to Rome. What do you think is significant about that? What does that cause? If you have your fighters loyal to only the commanders and not to the head of Rome, what do you think that can cause? War, like disruption, turmoil. Yeah. Yeah, so there's going to be a struggle for power because they all believe that there should be a different direction for Rome. That'd be like if the military now all of a sudden did not listen to the president at all. They could care less what the president said. And they only listen to their generals. What do you think that would cause? Yeah, okay, maybe. Yeah, so it caused a disorder within the government and maybe a change in the government. And this is where we start to see more of the fall of Rome, all right? And then also the average citizen loses interest for the affairs of Rome. So if you have your people losing interest in Roman society, what does that do? They move, or they start, not to purge. They start to disregard Roman rules and stuff like that. They lose interest in what makes Rome Rome. So the culture gets degraded also. But because of these soldiers losing loyalty to the government has to buy mercenaries. What are mercenaries?
Like today, like mercenaries, or like.
Well, what's a mercenary?
Mercenary is someone who's hired to kill somebody.
Okay, so it's the same concept. There's soldiers that are hired from outside sources to fight for you. Usually, most of these soldiers were from Northern Africa. They were from the Germanic tribes that they were fighting against, so they would pay these tribes to come fight against other Romans. And so you see a breakdown in even the military system of Rome. It's not just citizens of Rome fighting. It is now mercenaries fighting for Rome. All right. The Diocletian reforms to the empire. In AD 284, Emperor Diocletian restores order and divides the empire into two. Do you remember when we were talking about geography, where there was that split in the empire? There was the eastern side and there was the western side, right? And so that's where we kind of get part of that split. So the two empires, so there's two emperors for both empires. It's still considered the Roman Empire, but it's split in two, right? And so we have the Greek-speaking East, which is like the Byzantines, right? It's Greek. It's like part of Palestine and that area, and Egypt. That area would be that part. So the Latin-speaking, which would be the western side, would speak Latin, and they'd have their own also, right? The Diocletian retires though, and then what happens when you retire from a position? So somebody else thinks they should take it, right? And, yeah, and so he didn't really have a predecessor. He didn't have a lineage for him to take over. So what he decided to do, he just retired. And so rivals started to compete for power. What happens when rivals start competing for power? War, exactly, or conflict, some type of civil war. Yes, sir. No, not today.
Yeah. Rest for a couple days.
He's never here. All right. Yeah. So Constantine moves the capital. So Constantine becomes the emperor of Western Rome and seizes the Eastern Empire. So he would reclaim the other empire, and then he'd move the capital to Byzantine, which would be later be Constantinople. And then after that, in the modern age, it's now called Istanbul. So you see, so that's what eventually what it gets named. But the city is named after himself. He names the city after himself. Right. So we already talked about this. Mongol nomads from Asia, the Huns, the Attila the Hun, invades the northern borders of the empire. So what happened is we look at, so the Mongols and the Huns are from like Eurasia, like Russia. So they would come down and start pushing all these tribes closer and closer together, and then pushing them into the Roman Empire. What do you think happens when you have all these tribes being pushed into the Roman Empire? They're fighting. They're trying to control resources, control the land. Yes, they start raiding Rome. They need land. They need food. They need resources. They need these certain things to survive. They're being, they become desperate because they're getting pushed out by the Mongols, all right, by this the Huns, all right. So we've already talked about him. So it's an empire no more. So the last Roman emperor falls to the Germans in 476 AD, and it ends of the Western Empire. So this is where we get that that scattered little kingdoms of all those different, like the Visigoths, the Goths, those are all the Germanic tribes taking over these regions, all right? But the Eastern Empire would thrive for another 1,000 years. This is where we get the Byzantine Empire. It'll be around for a long time until the Ottoman Turks eventually destroy the empire, all right? All right, so that's the end of that. So that's kind of we've already talked about that a little bit. This is just that was a little bit more information about the fall of Rome, all right? And so now we're gonna talk about Rome and the roots of Western civilization. So like where influences of Rome have affected the Western world, or our world, right? So we already talked about that. I don't know why they redo that. So Roman fine art. So Romans developed a bas relief structure. Not structure. Sculpture to tell stories. So this is like a storytelling technique. It's a way, an art. We still use this today. All right. Artists are skilled in mosaics and paintings and frescoes. So a fresco is like a wall painting. Something that's it's either done with paint. It's done with like marbles or little pieces of plaster. It's something you put on the wall. It's a large painting on a wall. Right. And so we know a lot about these arts and artists because of Pompeii. Do you guys know what Pompeii is? Volcano, right? Covered the whole place in ash. There's actually there's still bodies that are basically perfectly preserved bodies. Literally whatever they were doing at the time, they were frozen in that position, or frozen. Well, melted, but like frozen in not the literal sense. Yeah, they were ashes. Their bodies like were stopped in whatever form they were when they died, and that's why. And then a lot of the buildings and architecture and art was actually also preserved under this sheet of ash, right? So it preserved the art, preserved the town, it preserved the people's bodies. There's actually a story of this dog. They have like this whole story of this dog that was in this Roman town, and they found its body with a piece of pastry in their mouth. So this kind of see that even some food was preserved. Right. So one thing with the Romans is that they didn't create everything that they had. They took a lot of from Greek influence, so like their philosophy and literature, and they would go into they would use it and then create more from it. They'd use it to expand knowledge and stuff like that, and they'd add to it, right? So Virgil would write an epic similar to Homer's Greek epics that we talked about, right? And so you see this trading of cultural knowledge, these trading of stories that go along with it, all right? And then we have Roman historians who excel in writing factually accurate history. So him and a few others would write these histories or annals that would provide comprehensive look at Roman life. This is how we know so much about Roman culture, Roman life, and Roman government, is because it was written about by these historians. So the Latin language, all right? I'm gonna hop back real quick. What are some Latin-based languages you guys know?
Spanish.
So Spanish, yeah, good. What else?
English.
It has some Latin words, but it's not Latin-based.
Portuguese.
Portuguese, yeah. So Spanish, Portuguese. Huh?
Colombian.
Colombian, just Spanish.
Jesus gets some.
Yeah. So we have Spanish. We have, what else?
Portuguese.
Portuguese. What else is in that region? Italian, yeah, right? What else? There's one more. There's one more major one.
French.
French, yes. So yes. So you have those four languages are very Latin-based. What?
It's a form of
Origami? What? So we have this we have a Latin-based language also. Half of our language is Latin-based, right? And so Latin was the official language of the Roman Catholics, right? It developed in what we know as French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and Romanian today, right? Which is interesting. My brother's girlfriend speaks 4 different languages.
What the?
Yeah, she speaks Spanish and Portuguese mainly, a little Italian, and then no French, but she can understand it. And so,
she's Mexican?
no, she's
Oh, you said
Portuguese.
Spanish.
Yeah, that doesn't mean she's Mexican, dude.
I know.
There's like- there's like-
You didn't say English.
Yeah.
You didn't say English. Yeah, you didn't say English.
Okay, she speaks English too. I'm sorry.
What?
Yeah. She speaks a little bit. So it's her. She speaks 3 main ones, but then she can speak a little bit of other languages too. But
bad word in Russian.
cool.
That doesn't mean you know.
But so she's fluent in multiple languages though. Anyways, so when I was talking to her about languages, she says that she speaks her main language is English and Portuguese, but she's like Spanish comes very natural to her because they're very similar. So does French. She doesn't know any French, but she went to France and could speak French with somebody because it was very similar. And then Italian, when they went to Italy, she said that she could conversate with people even in Spanish because it's very similar. These languages are very similar because they're Latin based. Also, the English language has about half of its words that have stems from Latin. So they're not fully Latin, but they have stem words for Latin. All right. All right. So master builders, as we've talked about, so the Romans pioneered the use of arches, right, and domes and concrete. What do we use concrete for? Literally everything, right? Buildings.
Like Lego Master Builder.
What?
I got not heard of that.
No.
It's on dudes like Lego Master Builder. They have like a certain amount of time to build Lego.
Oh, with Legos? Okay, interesting.
You played Legos?
Huh? Yeah. I mean, I was a kid once. So like yeah, concrete is literally, we use concrete for everything. Our floors, our buildings, our roads, our sidewalks, everything. Literally everything has. I mean, you can use anything as a weapon, but that's besides the point. So you can concrete's a very universal thing. It's one of the most universal things we use today, and it was developed by the Greeks and the Romans, and so it's very important to this day. Domes, we see a lot of dome-like structures. What are some dome-like structures we have today? Okay, structure man-made, not domes.
Tunnels.
Man-made.
Okay,
That's man-made.
it's technically man-made, but like think of a building. What buildings do we have that have domes?
Think of
The Omniplex in Fort Worth.
Omniplex and Fort Worth, good. What else?
in Dallas.
What in Dallas? The Omniplex in Dallas too.
There's some schools that have like gyms that have those.
Okay, gyms that have domes. What about our football stadiums? A lot of football stadiums have domes, right? Yeah. Yeah, AT&T Stadium. Some soccer fields also have domes. Yeah. So domes become very influential in Western architecture, and also in other architecture too.
Oh, those caps at the junior. Like those.
Is that race?
Yeah, you don't say stuff like that. It's not very appropriate.
That's like racist.
No,
It's not really appropriate.
Yeah, it's dome shaped.
But I guess you could. I mean, if you're gonna use that aspect, all hats are dome shaped too. So you can say that about any hat, any hoodie. But anyways,
That's just what Kano
okay. But like yeah, so we have stadiums that are made with domes. The Olympics, the Chinese when it was in Beijing, their main building was dome shaped. So domes are very influential in our architecture, right? What about aqueducts? What does that kind of show?
What is that?
The aqueducts.
What kind of shape is that?
Read what it says. Aqueduct on the screen.
Oh, like dams?
Kind of like dams. Alright. Okay. Hey, everybody up here. There's a bunch of random conversation and people saying random things. Let's get more focused. All right. So an aqueduct. We talked about this. We talked about how the Etruscans built this dam system and these trench systems, right, to carry water to towns. All right. And so now, because of aqueducts and this type of technology, we don't have to make every city buy a river. We can bring water to a city. And this is like where we get modern piping and stuff like that. All right.
Did you hear about that? About that road they're building underwater with
No, I'm not familiar with that. No. I know there is like train tunnels and stuff like that that are under the ocean.
That's the one that connects the English Channel.
Yeah, the English Channel. It's not really under the water. It's like it's in the ground under the water, so it's like water ground pipeline. Interesting.
Whenever you swim underwater, you're also swimming above water.
Yeah, I would guess so. And by technicality, so it comes from that idea. Are you wet when you're in water? Or are you not wet?
Yes.
Yeah. So all right. So we also get Roman system of law. So principles of Roman law form the basis of modern legal systems. So a lot of our ideas that we get for our legal system, our laws, come from Roman and Greek laws. All right. All right. So this enduring influence by preserving and adding to Greek civilization, Romans strengthened the Western cultural tradition. So we get thinkers, ideas, governmental systems. We get knowledge. We get stories that come from these Greeks, and then later strengthened by the Romans. All right, that's it. All right, you guys do have a quiz over this one. It's going to be Chapter 6, Section 4 quiz. Section 4.